Emma and I had been married for 5 years, and if there was ever a picture of a perfect marriage, ours was it. We had a warm, cozy home tucked away in a quiet neighborhood, where mornings smelled of fresh coffee, and evenings were spent on the couch watching our favorite shows. Our relationship wasn't just built on love, it was built on mutual respect, understanding, and unwavering support for each other. Emma worked in the corporate world, steadily climbing the ranks with her determination and sharp mind. I ran a small but thriving business, which gave me the freedom to set my own hours. While her workdays were structured and full of meetings, mine often shifted depending on the demands of my clients. Our schedules didn't always align perfectly, but we'd gotten used to it over the years. We had a rhythm, sharing breakfast when we could, texting each other throughout the day, and catching up every night before bed. One of my favorite parts of our day was dinner. Emma loved experimenting with new recipes she found online, though she had a habit of turning the kitchen into a disaster zone by the time she was done. I didn't mind cleaning up, watching her excitement as she plated her latest creation made it worth it. She'd always flash me that radiant smile when she asked, "What do you think?" As if she didn't already know I'd love it. We talked about everything: work, dreams, silly inside jokes. Our life felt like a partnership in every sense of the word. We had plans for the future, from traveling to new places to maybe starting a family someday. It all felt solid, secure. Then, one day, my phone buzzed with a call from Mike, an old friend I hadn't spoken to in years. Back in college, Mike and I had been inseparable. He was the guy who could make anyone laugh, charm his way into any situation, and somehow always landed on his feet no matter how much chaos he left in his wake. "Tyler, man, long time no talk." His voice was as upbeat as I remembered. We caught up for a bit, reminiscing about old times before he got to the point. "Hey, listen," he said, his tone shifting. "I'm in a bit of a bind right now, job-wise. I was wondering if you could help me out. Maybe put in a word for me at your company or something?" I paused. While I cared about Mike, I'd always believed that mixing work and friendship was a recipe for disaster. "Mike, I wish I could, but I don't think that's a good idea," I said, trying to sound as kind as possible. "I really believe it's better to keep personal and professional lives separate, but if I hear about any openings, I'll definitely let you know." Mike let out a small laugh, the kind that told me he wasn't thrilled with my answer but was trying to hide it. "No problem, man. Thanks anyway." We ended the call on good terms, or so I thought, and I didn't think much of it after that. Life went on, just as it always had. A week later, during dinner, Emma mentioned something casually while scrolling through her phone. "Oh, I forgot to tell you. We've got a new hire at work," she said, reaching for her glass of water. "He's new to the industry, so they've assigned me to mentor him. You know, show him the ropes." "That's great," I said, genuinely happy for her. Emma had always been a natural leader. "I'm sure he'll learn a lot from you," she smiled, looking pleased. "I hope so. It's been a bit of a learning curve for him, so I've been staying late to help him get up to speed. But it's temporary. Once he's settled, things should go back to normal." "Sounds like a good opportunity for you," I said, and I meant it. I knew Emma wanted to move up in her company, and mentoring someone was a chance for her to show what she was capable of. At the time, I didn't think twice about it. Why would I? Emma had always been honest with me, and her dedication to her career was one of the things I admired most about her. If staying late a few nights meant she could make progress toward her goals, then so be it. Looking back now, I realize that moment was the first small shift in our lives. It didn't feel significant at the time, just another detail in our daily routine. But sometimes, it's the smallest cracks that grow into something bigger. And I never saw it coming. At first, it seemed like nothing out of the ordinary. Emma's late nights at the office were just a part of her job, or at least that's what I told myself. She'd text me occasionally to say she'd be home late, usually with an apology attached. "Big deadline, I'll explain when I'm home. Don't wait up, okay?" I didn't mind. She was ambitious and I respected her drive. If staying late a few nights was what it took for her to climb the corporate ladder, who was I to argue? but those few nights started turning into a regular thing. Some evenings she'd come home hours later than expected, her heels clicking softly on the floor as she tried not to wake me. I'd hear her whispering to herself in the kitchen, probably reheating leftovers before quietly slipping into bed. I told myself it was just a busy season, that things would calm down eventually. After all, Emma had always been open with me about her work. Why should I think otherwise now? Then came the company party. Emma had mentioned it earlier in the week, saying it was a mandatory event and that she might stay late. Networking is half the job, she'd said, brushing off my suggestion to pick her up afterward. I didn't think much of it at the time. That night, I stayed up waiting for her, scrolling through my phone absent-mindedly. When I finally heard the door unlock, I looked up to see Emma practically glowing as she walked in. Her face was flushed, her eyes bright, and there was an energy about her that I couldn't quite place. "You're still awake?" she asked, setting her bag down and slipping off her shoes. "Couldn't sleep," I said, studying her. "How was the party?" She laughed softly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "It was great. Everyone was in such a good mood. The team really needed this." Her excitement was infectious, but it felt strange. Emma had never liked these kinds of events before, always calling them boring work obligations. Now, she seemed almost exhilarated. "What made it so great?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. She hesitated for just a fraction of a second before answering. "Oh, you know, the usual. Good food, drinks, lots of laughs. It was nice to see everyone letting loose for once." Her answers felt rehearsed, like she was saying what she thought I wanted to hear. I didn't press further, though. I didn't want to seem like I was doubting her. Still, something about the way she avoided eye contact lingered in my mind long after she went to bed. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing small changes in her. She began putting more effort into her appearance, buying new outfits, experimenting with different hairstyles, and spending longer than usual in front of the mirror. It wasn't like Emma to obsess over her looks. She'd always been confident, effortlessly beautiful without much fuss. "Someone's trying to impress the office," I joked one morning as she adjusted her makeup for the third time. She laughed, lightly but didn't look at me. "You could say that. It's just, you know, appearances matter." I nodded, trying to brush off the unease that was creeping in. She was probably just trying to maintain a professional image. That's all it was, right? But her reactions felt distant, nervous even. When I'd ask her about work, her answers were shorter than usual, like she didn't want to dive into the details. I chalked it up to stress, convincing myself there was nothing to worry about. Then, one night, something happened that I couldn't ignore. We were sitting in the living room, each lost in our own tasks. I was flipping through a magazine while Emma worked on her laptop. Out of nowhere, she asked, "Can you grab me some water, Mark?" I froze, my stomach tightening. "Mark!" I repeated, my voice calm but with an edge I couldn't hide. Her head shot up, her eyes wide with panic. "Oh, sorry, I meant you," she stammered, forcing an awkward laugh. "I was thinking about a client at work. My brain must have mixed things up." I tried to laugh it off, but the knot in my chest didn't go away. Mark. The name felt heavy, like it carried a meaning I couldn't quite grasp yet. Was it really just a slip of the tongue, or was it something more? That night, as we lay in bed, her back turned to me, I stared at the ceiling, replaying the moment in my head. I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. But for the first time in our marriage, I couldn't shake the feeling that Emma was hiding something. And no matter how much I tried to ignore it, the doubt was there, growing like a shadow in the corner of my mind. The small changes in Emma's behavior were becoming harder to ignore. She'd always been open with me, especially when it came to her work, but now it was like she was building a wall between us. Her phone, once casually left on the counter or the coffee table, was now always within arm's reach. If it buzzed, she'd glance at the screen and quickly turn it face down. If I asked about her day or how the new hire was doing, her responses were vague, evasive. "He's fine," she'd say, barely looking up from her laptop. "Still getting the hang of things." Her dismissive tone only added to my unease. It wasn't just what she said. It was how she said it. There was an edge of nervousness, like she was choosing her words carefully. One evening, as we were finishing dinner, she cleared her throat and set her fork down. "So," she began, her eyes fixed on the table, "there's a work dinner tomorrow. Night. Just a small thing with the team." "Sounds nice," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "Want me to drop you off or pick you up after?" Her reaction was immediate. "No," she said quickly, a little too quickly. "I'll drive myself. It's not a big deal." I raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" "It wouldn't be any trouble." She shook her head, forcing a smile. "It's really fine, Tyler. Just one of those boring work things." Something about the way she avoided my gaze made my chest tighten. I wanted to believe her, to push the doubt out of my mind. But it was getting harder to ignore the voice in my head, whispering that something wasn't right. The next evening, Emma spent extra time getting ready. She slipped into a sleek black dress, one I hadn't seen her wear in months, and styled her hair with meticulous care. When she came downstairs, she looked stunning, but the sight of her only deepened the pit in my stomach. "Wow," I said, forcing a smile. "You look incredible. Are you sure this is just a work dinner?" She laughed lightly, brushing past me to grab her purse. "Appearances matter, you know, especially when you're trying to make an impression." She kissed me on the cheek, her perfume lingering in the air as she walked out the door. "Don't wait up," she called over her shoulder. The moment the door clicked shut, I grabbed my keys. I wasn't planning to sit at home, drowning in doubt. If Emma had nothing to hide, then I'd see that for myself. But if my gut was right, I didn't even want to finish the thought. I followed her car at a safe distance as she drove into the city. My heart pounded harder with every turn, the headlights illuminating the growing sense of dread inside me. She wasn't heading toward a restaurant or a corporate office. Instead, her car pulled into the parking lot of a nightclub. My grip tightened on the steering wheel as I parked a block away, trying to process what I was seeing. A nightclub? This wasn't the kind of place you went for a professional dinner. It wasn't the kind of place Emma would normally go at all. I stepped out of my car and followed her, keeping my distance as she walked toward the entrance. She moved quickly, her heels clicking softly against the pavement, her head held high. When she disappeared inside, I hesitated for a moment, my stomach twisting in knots. Part of me wanted to turn back, to convince myself that there was some innocent explanation for all of this. But the other part, the part that couldn't ignore the nagging doubt, pushed me forward. I opened the door and stepped inside, the heavy bass of the music vibrating through my chest. The club was dimly lit, neon lights flashing across the crowded room. The smell of alcohol and perfume hung heavy in the air. I stood there for a moment, scanning the sea of people, searching for her. My heart pounded louder than the music as I took a step further inside. Something was wrong, I could feel it, and I was about to find out exactly what. The pounding bass of the music reverberated through my chest as I pushed further into the dimly lit club. The crowd was dense, bodies moving to the rhythm of the music under flickering neon lights. My eyes darted across the room, scanning every corner, every face, searching for Emma. At first I thought I'd lost her in the chaos, but then I saw her. She was standing near the far end of the bar, her back to me, illuminated by a flicker of neon blue. My heart stopped for a moment. She wasn't alone. A man stood next to her, leaning in close. His hand rested lightly on her waist as he spoke into her ear. She laughed, her head tilting back, her body language open and familiar. It was a laugh I knew well, the one reserved for moments of genuine joy. Seeing it now, directed at someone else, made my stomach churn. For a second I tried to rationalize it. Maybe this was just her colleague, the one she was mentoring. Maybe it was all innocent. But as I stepped closer, weaving through the crowd, my hope dissolved. The man turned slightly and I caught a glimpse of his face. My breath caught in my throat. It was Mike, my old friend. The same Mike who had called me weeks ago asking for help and whom I had turned away. He stood there, his arm around my wife, laughing as if he had won some cruel game. I froze, the world around me blurring into static. For a moment, I wondered if I was imagining things. Maybe this was some sort of twisted nightmare, and I'd wake up any second. But as I stood there watching them, the truth became undeniable. I forced myself to move closer, my steps heavy as if I were dragging the weight of my shattered trust behind me. Emma's laughter faded as her eyes landed on me. Her face went pale, her smile vanishing instantly. She stepped back from Mike, her lips parting as if to say something, but no words came out. Mike turned, and when he saw me, his reaction was the complete opposite. His face lit up with a smug, almost triumphant grin. He raised his drink in a mock toast, his eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "Well, look who it is," he said, his voice dripping with arrogance. "Tyler, long time no see." I didn't respond. My eyes were locked on Emma, searching for some sign of remorse, some explanation that could make this all make sense. But her expression said it all. The guilt in her eyes, the way she avoided my gaze. It was over. She'd been caught, and she knew it. Mike, clearly enjoying the moment, took a step closer. "You didn't want to help me with a job, remember?" he said, his tone casual but laced with malice. "No hard feelings, though. I found something better, a spot right next to your wife." His words hit me like a sledgehammer, but I refused to give him the satisfaction of a reaction. My gaze shifted back to Emma, who finally found her voice. "Tyler," she said, her voice trembling. "It's not what it looks like. Please just let me explain." "Not what it looks like?" I repeated, my voice eerily calm. "Then tell me, Emma, what exactly am I looking at?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her silence was louder than anything she could have said. It was the confirmation I didn't want, but already knew deep down. Mike chuckled, shaking his head. "Come on, Emma, don't make it awkward. He's not stupid." I turned to him, my jaw clenched. For a brief moment, I thought about hitting him, about wiping that smug grin off his face. But then I realized it wouldn't change anything. It wouldn't undo what had been done. It wouldn't bring back the trust, the love, the life I thought I had. Without another word, I turned and walked away. Emma called after me, her voice breaking, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. The weight of their betrayal pressed down on me with every step, but I refused to let it break me. The cold night air hit me as I stepped outside, but it didn't bring the relief I was hoping for. I stood there for a moment, staring at the street, trying to process everything. Mike's smug face, Emma's guilt, the realization that the two people I trusted most had destroyed everything I thought was real. This wasn't just about Emma's betrayal. It was about Mike's, too. A man I once considered a friend had wormed his way into my life and taken what wasn't his. It was a double blow, one I wasn't sure I could recover from. But as I stood there, I made a decision. I wasn't going to fight for something that had already been shattered. I wasn't going to beg for explanations or apologies. They could have each other, for all I cared. I got into my car and drove away, leaving them and everything we had built behind me. My life as I knew it was over, but as painful as it was, there was a strange sense of clarity in that realization. Sometimes the only way to move forward is to let go completely. And that's exactly what I intended to do.